All right, Corey, we are entering NBA free agency. It's coming up pretty soon. It's looks like it's going to be late November, December 1st, somewhere in there, wherever they end up negotiating. Look, this is not an elite free agent class. There's nobody well, Anthony Davis is out there, but he's not changing teams. But there is some really interesting stuff, right? Like there's really interesting players, really intriguing guys who could switch teams. I mean, who are you going to be watching? What are one of the guys you're going to have your eye on for NBA free agency?
Yeah, first and foremost, I just want to agree with you versus like last year, where you had just bedlam. Last year's free agency was a reality TV show. And this year's free agency is more normal and everyone's kind of like, oh, there's nothing going on. But I think the piece here to watch for me is, can the Bucks re-sign Giannis? I feel like that's on everyone's radar.
Yeah.
But the one that's a little more interesting, just as a fan personally, is Goran Dragic and his piece and fit in with the Miami Heat. We saw the Heat team roll through an Eastern Conference, which was really interesting to see. I mean, they played against a great Bucks team, number one seed. They played against a talented Celtics team and bested them. They went 6 games with the Los Angeles Lakers without Bam and Goran for the majority of that. So if you get those pieces back, I think you can go pretty far. But the only question is, do you go for Kendrick Nunn, who had some valuable minutes late in the finals against the Lakers in Goran's absence? Or do you try to re-up Goran Dragic and go Butler, Dragic, and Hero again? So that's where I'm going to be spending most of my time.
See, you're right. Last year was a wild free agency, and 2021 sets up to be that way. In fact, you mentioned Antetokounmpo. I bet he doesn't sign right now. It keeps pressure on the organization to build around him. You can always re-sign. It's the exact same deal a year from now. So, if he waits, he's fine, and he might just do that. But there's all sorts of possibilities in 2021. That includes the Miami Heat, who think they have a shot at Antetokounmpo, plus a bunch of other top free agents that are available that year. I think they're going to try to sign Goran to a big one-year deal, but it's going to be interesting because you're right. I think other teams, if you're the Clippers, maybe you come in with a longer mid-level exception deal and you can offer him a little more money and a little length of security. And it's going to be interesting to see him decide, and some of those Heat players decide what exactly they want to do in free agency. Jay Crowder is available. It's going to be interesting to see if they can roll that exact team back or how they make it work. Look, the best free agent that may switch teams to me is Fred VanVleet, but I think the guy that might be slightly more interesting is Montrezl Harrell. Sixth man of the year, comes in rolling. You think, oh man, this guy's going to get a lot of suitors and a lot of money. A lot of teams could use that kind of energy. And then he gets exposed in the playoffs. His defense isn't there. They're better off with Zubac on the floor. They're actually minus 11.6 per 100 when he's on the floor in the playoffs. And part of that was because he wasn't there because of his grandmother's death and some stuff, and he wasn't in shape that he normally would be. But it hurt him. And now I'm curious, the Clippers will pay to bring him back, but I don't think he's going to get the money he thought he was. And I'm curious if he can, with Charlotte, who was a kind of team that was looking at a big, and if they don't get somebody like James Wiseman in the draft, do they come in big? Or does some other team come in and say, man, we could really use the energy he brings and we'll come in over the top? And if they do the Clippers go, you know what, we'll just sign Marcus Morris, we'll keep Zubac and let it walk? I'm really curious how that's going to play out, how the Clippers what the Clippers are going to do this offseason after that disappointment and with their new coach. Or are they just going to try to run it back? I think that's a fascinating one. I don't know the answer.
It's a conundrum.
Yeah.
But you're right, Harold, his energy, who's an absolute spark plug.
Yeah.
And I think that it doesn't always, when you have a guy like that, it doesn't always translate directly to the stat sheet. Sometimes there's just almost like a chemistry or an energetic field around some of those guys that bring everyone else up. So it's hard to quantify that. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and there's other guys like that. I think Carmelo Anthony is sort of like that. You're like, oh, he found a home. He's in Portland. Well, there's talk about the Knicks trying to get him or other teams trying to poach him. And plus, he was really valuable to them when they were injured. But Zach Collins, Rodney Hood, Trevor Ariza, who skipped the bubble, they're all back. So the minutes for Melo are a little less. Does he go somewhere he wants to get, more? I don't know that he's going to make a lot more money, but can he go somewhere he gets more run as opposed to the role he's going to have to take in Portland, which will be smaller next year just because of everybody being healthy? And I'll tell you, one sneaky name to watch on free agency, Christian Wood. 4th and 6th man of the year voting. Look, he was with the Detroit Pistons, for people who weren't following Detroit Pistons, which was, a lot of people because they weren't terribly good. But he played really well, especially at the end of the season. It was fascinating. there's a lot of teams looking at him as a guy they might want to come in and try to poach. If you want a big man, how much are they going to pay to keep him? They traded Andre Drummond. It sounds like they're going to pay to keep him, but he's a guy who he could get one of those salaries, Corey, where suddenly everybody's like, "Wait, who just got how much money? What?"
the Boban effect, right? I think about
exactly.
like all the guys from San Antonio that play like a role, emerge, and then sign max deals at like Davis Bertans. Like just the list kind of goes on.
Bertans is going to get paid. He is a free agent this summer, and he is probably with Washington. But talk about, man, if you're a stretch big, it's a good time to be a stretch big, Corey. You should have been a stretch big.
Give me 5 inches. That's all I need. Give me 5 inches, and I'll sign a $20 million contract tomorrow.
Okay, we'll work on that.